Welcome to Sports Management Podcast, where you will hear interesting sports management professionals share their stories, experiences, and passion for the sports management industry. I am your host, Marcus Philipson. Today's guest is Charlie Dewhurst. He is the Commercial Strategy Director at SailGP. If you haven't heard about SailGP, it's a very exciting sailing competition where the catamarans can reach speeds up to 60 knots. Charlie and I talk about the upcoming premiere of SailGP Season 2, which kicks off in Bermuda in the end of April. We also talk about sustainability, SailGP's new app, and how it is to plan an event during a global pandemic. Let's kick off episode 16 with Charlie Dewhurst. Charlie Dewhurst, welcome to the Sports Management Podcast.
Thanks for having me on. Looking forward to the discussion today.
Yes, it will indeed be a very interesting one. You are the Commercial Strategy Director at SailGP. So if you can first tell us a little bit what is SailGP and what your position includes.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess let's start with what is SailGP. So SailGP was founded in 2018 by Larry Ellison and Russell Coutts. It's a brand new global sports sail racing championship. And I think like all good ideas, it was created by Larry and Russell seeing a gap in the market, and that gap in the market really was, I think, based on years of experience of racing and winning America's Cups from all the way from kind of the mid noughties to 2017, and kind of a constant realization that kind of the commercial model of the America's Cup just doesn't work. It's just not sustainable. So kind of there was a massive opportunity, that Larry and Russell saw to develop a global sailing championship that was commercially viable, and to do that by creating something that was much more frequent, much shorter and sharper, involved more teams, and was done at a much lower cost. So they set it up. It's a nation versus nation global sailing championship. We go around the world. Season 2 is just about to start in Bermuda in April, the end of April. We've got nine races in that season. We race in Europe, in the Americas, in APAC. So it is a kind of a global championship. We've got 8 national teams skippered by the top sailors in the world, really the cream of the cream. We've got Ben Ainslie skippering the British team, Tom Slingsby skippering the Australian team, Jimmy Spithill skippering the US team, and then Blair and Pete, who are skippering the New Zealand team. And a lot of those sailors that I've just rattled off are sailing in the America's Cup in Auckland at the moment. So I think we're expecting some real fireworks in season 2 with those athletes. And then they're all racing on one design F50s, and the F50 is a foiling catamaran that was kind of evolved off the back of the 2017 America's Cup. And we like to say it's the most technologically advanced sailing boat that's ever been developed. It hits speeds of over 50 knots, which is about 60 miles an hour, 100 kilometers an hour. So you imagine sticking your head out of the car at 60 miles an hour, and you kind of experience what's that like, and the forces and the technology involved are really quite phenomenal. So it's a fantastic product. It's been developed in a way that makes it absolutely spot on for the global sailing audience, but also one of our core objectives that we'll come on to, I'm sure, is to engage a much broader audience of general sports fans, kind of a much more family audience as well. And we've got another number of mechanisms to do that. But that's SailGP, but actually it's quite important, kind of before we dive into me, to talk about kind of why SailGP. So yes, partly it was set up by Larry and Russell to address a gap in the market, and to develop a really fantastic sail racing championship. But I think more than that, it was set up to kind of play a part in addressing the global climate crisis. So we know kind of the great Mandela quote around how sport has the power to change the world, and we've seen some fantastic examples of what sport's doing now to tackle racism and other inequality. And I think us at SailGP believe very passionately that sport can now play a role in addressing the global climate crisis. So the more you look into this, the kind of the scarier it becomes, in the sense that, although there's a really positive narrative around sustainability and clean energy, there needs to be more urgency. At the moment, we're on course for a global warming of 3.3 degrees by 2050, which I think everyone knows is just too much, and that's going to kind of trigger off some pretty bad things for the world, and we're already seeing a lot of that at the moment. And all of the research that we're seeing and the experts that we're speaking to are telling us that the world needs twice the investment in clean energy technology and new infrastructure. It needs to move at 6 times the speed. So really what SailGP is trying to do in this space is to be a champion of clean energy and to play our part in accelerating that transition through our platform, but also by investing in and creating new technologies and partnering with like-minded organizations that also believe in that philosophy. And our purpose is to race for the future and to champion a world powered by nature. And our ultimate goal is to accelerate the transition to clean energy as the number one energy source. And the fantastic thing about SailGP and sailing is that we are powered by nature. Our sail racing is 100% powered by the wind, and it's just, I guess, a fantastic showcase of the kind of the power of clean energy and what it can do to create not just a fantastic sports property and an entertainment product, but also to kind of power everyone's lives. And that's the message that we want to get out, and we want to work with like-minded partners that also share that philosophy that clean energy is part of the solution, and together we can all work on tackling this kind of massive challenge, but certainly is within our grasp to address. So that's SailGP, and I guess why we race. Wanted to give that background because I'm conscious that not everyone will know about SailGP, and then my role as commercial strategy director is really to oversee the development and delivery of the commercial strategy for SailGP, so that we can secure the revenues that enable us to deliver on that mission. Both to secure the revenues that will enable us to race and go around the world and showcase the power of nature, but also to kind of reinvest a lot of that money back into creating new technologies that will play their part in making that shift, that global shift to clean energy. And at the moment that we're very focused on commercial partnerships, kind of what we like to term as purpose-driven partnerships, as well as securing revenue from the 9 or 10 host cities that we're racing in. That's our kind of the bulk of our revenue. But obviously over time that commercial model will grow as our audience increases, as our broadcast property becomes more valuable, as we get other revenue sources around merchandise licensing, those kind of things as well. But that's the focus at the moment. And then in practice, it really means that I'm giving the firepower to our global sales team so that they can get deals done fundamentally, whether that's with commercial partners or with host cities, giving them a great proposition to sell, making sure that they've got the data and insight to build really robust business cases for prospective partners. Also, it's quite fundamental around kind of working out who we sell to, because we want to partner with like-minded organizations, and we want to partner with organizations that we can really add value to through this proposition. And then I guess the final thing is to oversee our global sales team and the thousands of conversations that we're having at the moment at any one time, make sure everything's as coordinated and efficient as it can be.
Wow, that's very interesting. Do you see that when you're looking for commercial partners, that the strategy behind SailGP with the environmental aspect helps you to attract more commercial partners?
Yeah, I mean, I guess taking a step back, I'd say one of the great corporate trends at the moment is around corporate sustainability.
Yeah.
So we see that a lot of corporate organizations are taking fantastic and kind of meaningful steps for their businesses to become more sustainable. So a lot of organizations are committing to science-based targets. A lot of organizations have signed up something called RE100, which is a commitment to 100% renewable energy. There's a lot of, I guess there's a wave of change happening in the corporate world at the moment. But where we see kind of ourselves playing a fantastic role within this space is to provide that platform for organizations to communicate around what they're doing here. Because consumers, I think, that there's always been that kind of that issue of greenwashing. Consumers probably don't really know which corporates are good and which corporates are bad. And I think we can provide a platform to showcase the great corporates and the work that they're doing. The Unilevers of this world. One of our partners is Oracle. They're doing some absolutely fantastic work in this space, powering their data centers with clean energy and using their technology to kind of be part of the solution. So yeah, we can be that champion of the work that they're doing, and this great showcase of kind of that wave of change. So yeah, I think because of the way that the corporate industry is going, I think we can be a fantastic platform for that. And it is kind of right at the heart of, I'd say our commercial proposition is providing that kind of purpose-driven partnership. So yes, there's everything that kind of all of the robust data that comes around, our audience and our demographics that are particularly attractive to certain partners. But really fundamentally, I think everything comes down to wanting to find partners that want to go on that journey with us, that share with our purpose, that share that goal of getting to clean energy as the number one global energy source. So yes, I think do see it as really important, but also all of the conversations that we're having at the moment with current and prospective partners, this is the number one thing that's on their list. And I think it's quite a differentiated proposition, obviously, that we can offer within the marketplace. So I'm sure over the next sort of 2 to 4 years, it's going to serve us really well.
With regards to sustainability, is that also when you are building the boats? For example, are you using recycled materials, or how are you working when you're building the boats with regards to sustainability?
Yeah, it's a fantastic question. So we develop all of our. I mean, SailGP is a really interesting business because SailGP at the moment owns the league. So the global league is SailGP, and that's obviously owned by us. We also own all of the teams, so the 8 teams, and we run the events ourselves. And then alongside that, we have a technology business called Core Builders that has traditionally developed the boats for Larry Ellison's America's Cup campaigns, but now develops all of the technology for SailGP, as well as some of the technologies that we're talking about developing that will help us with our objective of becoming more sustainable and being the world's most sustainable global racing championship. So the fact that we develop all of that in-house, I think, is a massive asset for us, because it means that we can mandate the very highest standards of environmental practices. So yes, we have a partnership with an organization called ELG, which is a carbon fiber recycling organization. And we have the ambition at the moment of when we develop our next round of boats, probably in sort of 3 to 4 years, all of the carbon that we've got on our boats at the moment will be recycled into those. So ultimately the aim there is kind of very much around circular economy, circular manufacturing, and kind of all done in a very sustainable way. And then we have a number of discussions at the moment ongoing with solar panel firms around powering that whole facility with solar power. It's currently powered by kind of grid clean energy, but we want to power it with our own clean energy so that we can be kind of 100% powered by nature in that facility as well as on the boat. So yeah, the manufacture of those, as I say, done with the highest standards of sustainability, and that's something that we've implemented in that part of the business, but also kind of across SailGP and all of our teams as well.
Wow, that's really amazing. Well done there. SailGP Season 2 is coming up end of April 2021. How has it been to plan Season 2 with regards to the pandemic?
Well, I mean, this is the massive challenge that sport's gone through, obviously, and I'd say we've been as impacted as anyone else. We started our second season in February in 2020 in Sydney. We had a fantastic race. It was the first racing that Ben Ainsley took part in, and the British crew won that event. And the numbers that we were seeing off the back of that event as well were really positive. There was a lot of growth from season 1 to season 2, and we felt like we were generating a lot of momentum, especially as a young startup sports organization. That's obviously really important. So we felt the pandemic hit us pretty hard. stopping that and losing some of that momentum. But I think we took the pretty early decision to cancel to postpone our second season and to defer that to start again in April 2021. Take a whole year really to let the pandemic die down and to make sure that when we're racing again, we're racing in a different world. Now, whether that's happened or not, we'll come on to, because the goalposts keep shifting back, and we know that at the end of April is still going to be impacted, although we're confident we'll be racing. But what we did over that period is, I think, two things. One is that we took a real step back, which is a very kind of unique position, I say, for a startup sports organization to do. Once you get into that delivery mode, you're kind of up and running, and then you're just going. But actually being able to take a step back after having done a season, after having collected a lot of data on our fans, on our product, was fantastically valuable for us, I'd say. So it enabled us to develop a whole new 5-year business plan and strategy, as well as to look at the areas of our product that we could improve, how we can make the racing more exciting, more understandable. So I'd say that kind of off the back of the pandemic and going into season 2, we're much clearer around kind of what our strategy looks like for the next 5 years. And right at the heart of that is purpose and sustainability and clean energy, which we've talked about. But also our product, I'd say, is fundamentally, it's sharper, it's more exciting, it's more understandable. The TV product that we'll be putting out, both through our broadcast partners, but also through our own channels, is going to be higher quality. So, I'm really confident, and we're all very excited about kind of what we can show to our fans when we're back racing. So that was kind of the big focus really of the pandemic time. But then the other thing was making sure that we come back with a bang and we have a very exciting and full second season. So we spend a lot of time looking at kind of options for where we could race, and where could we secure hosting fees, where could we partner with host cities that wanted SailGP to go there and develop a really compelling calendar. So we start in Bermuda at the end of April. We have 5 races in Europe, in Italy, in the UK, and in Denmark, in the south of France, and in Spain, and then we move to APAC before the finals in San Francisco in March 2022. So, being able to secure that quality of calendar and having that certainty of racing at that volume of times, and I guess seeing the progress from running 5 races in season 1 to doing 9 races in season 2 just shows that kind of we're back at it, and we, as I said, we're coming back with a bang. And from then, SailGP, I'd say, will be up and running, and we'll have 10 events in season 3, and the interest and I guess the number of commercial partnerships will increase over time as well. So I'd say that actually in a lot of ways, having the pandemic was probably in some ways a good thing for us, because it enabled us to collectively as an organization step back and develop a really strong product going forwards. And that product, we all internally really, really believe in and buy into and are super excited about. But the challenge is like you're launching that product in a very uncertain market, and that's going to be, I think, our real challenge going forwards. Is just, especially for the next sort of 6 months, is kind of what do those events look like? What does the commercial landscape in sport look like over that time? But if we can weather that storm, which we absolutely can, then from 22 onwards, I think we're going to be in really, really good shape.
I'm glad to hear. And sometimes you need to take a step back in order to take 2 steps forward. And it seems like that's what you have been doing.
I feel, 1 step back, maybe 5 steps forwards. We're optimists here. So we're really happy about how we're set up for the next season.
Yeah.
Albeit kind of conscious of the challenges of, what the short term looks like.
I see. So if we talk about the start of the season 2 in Bermuda, and you mentioned the broadcasting, and you also have an app. And now with the pandemic, will it be able to have spectators close to the racing area, the broadcasting, the app? So how are you thinking around the fan engagement for the event?
Yeah, I think it would change in different locations, because we know the one thing that we know about the pandemic is it's different in different spaces. So in Bermuda, for example, Bermuda have done a fantastic job in containing COVID, and that is a small island. They're very passionate about their sailing now off the back of the 2017 America's Cup. So we're expecting really strong fan engagement there. Tens of thousands of fans, really strong kind of hospitality proposition that's going to be very well attended. We've got quite a lot of local partners in Bermuda, banks, reinsurance firms, insurance firms, professional services, you name it really. So that event actually in a lot of ways is going to feel quite normal, and the fans in Bermuda are going to have a fantastic time experiencing that product either on the water or on shore. But then kind of when we move to Europe, it could become much more complex, and we're probably less confident about certainly getting the level of kind of fans that we're used to, which is probably around 15 to 20,000 fans a day watching the racing from the shore, because similar to cycling, it's one of those great products that, yes, there are ticketed zones that you can pay to have the best view at, but equally there's a number of places where you can watch the racing from, and it's all designed to be inshore, what we call stadium racing, where you can watch it from the shore. So I think as we go through the season, we'll see those numbers ramping up and up, and we'll see a return back to normality for SailGP from a kind of in-fan perspective. And hopefully by the end of the season, certainly by the finals in San Francisco in May 22. And again, San Francisco is a real sailing hub. It's got really strong heritage from America's Cup days. We'd love to see, tens of thousands of fans watching the finals there, and watching that winner takes all $1 million race at the end of the season, which is really a unique prize in sailing. So that's the in-person experience. But obviously, kind of through the next 6 months and ongoing, to be honest, we're going to be very focused on what the virtual, what the broadcast, and what the app experience looks like. And there's been a lot of time and effort and investment that's gone into making sure that those products are as good as they can be. So from a broadcast perspective, we're broadcast to 150 territories at the moment around the world. In the UK, we're on Sky Sports for all of our races, and I'm sure that there'll be some terrestrial highlights deals as well. So those broadcast partners will be an excellent channel to engage with the sailing audience, but also a broader audience, as we discussed. And then the app, as you say, is something that we're really proud of. It's multi-award winning. It's absolutely fantastic. It's a platform where our followers, people that download the app, can watch the racing. There's, I think, 8 different feeds that go onto that. And again, that's one of the great assets of being SailGP, and that we develop our own broadcast. We control the rights. We have the ability to put it out on as many different platforms as possible. And whether you're accessing it on broadcast, on Sky Sports, or on YouTube, or on Facebook, or through our app, it's a very kind of multi-channel experience. But the great thing about the app is just the richness of that experience. There's 1,200 data points as well through that app, so that you can really understand who's winning, why they're winning. What it kind of demystifies the racing, should we say? So would certainly be the kind of the best place to watch the racing on, and a fantastic place to learn more about SailGP and kind of get under the hood of the racing, so to speak.
Something else, in a previous episode, we were talking about Formula One, and that they are moving to many different locations. But they are not as dependent on the weather and the climate as you are. And I mean, the climate in Bermuda versus Denmark is extremely different. How are you working with that, and how can you make sure that you will have fine racing conditions in different places at different times?
Yeah, it's a fantastic question. So, I mean, the first answer is that we're very careful about choosing where we race. There's a pre-vetting process based on wind conditions and what the stadium, what the race course looks like, and depth and things like that. So yeah, we're very careful around selecting venues that will have wind, have a great race course, and that we're racing there at the right time of year. So Bermuda in April is a fantastic place to race. There's very consistent winds in the same way that San Francisco in March is, again, a fantastic place. And then Denmark, we're racing in Denmark in August. So fingers crossed we'll get some good weather there. And we're in the UK in July. So from that perspective, we're very, I'd say, strategic around kind of choosing where we race and making sure that we race in times that will get favorable conditions. And then the other part is, I guess, a technical part. So we've invested a lot in making sure that our boats can race in all conditions. So they've got these massive, what we call the 29-meter wings, which are, as it says, a 29-meter fixed wing, which is absolutely huge, which can get the boats racing at 4 knots of wind, which is basically kind of a little breath of air, and can do some quite entertaining racing at that speed, all the way up to a much smaller sail for really high wind conditions, about 30 knots. So the reality is that, choosing the right area and having that technology that enables us to race in a kind of a fairly broad set of wind conditions minimizes our risk of not being able to race. But as you say, there is some risk, but there's risk in all sport of, cricket has the risk of rain. Formula One's got a risk of rain as well. Like the weather sometimes intervenes, but we're pretty confident that we've done everything that we can to minimize that. And I'd be very surprised if there was more than, say, one day next season, touch wood, that was impacted by the weather.
You're indeed an optimist, as you said before.
Absolutely.
It's good to hear. In the second segment, we usually get to know the guest a little more. And you mentioned before just Formula One and cricket, which are other sports that you have worked in. So can you give us a little bit of background of yourself, how you got into sports management and the journey up until today at SailGP?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'd say, Williams Formula One would be the start of my journey into sports management, and the place where kind of I found that there was an industry that I wanted to get into. So I worked with Williams while I was studying at the Judge Business School in Cambridge as part of a consulting project for them. It was fantastic. Others were consulting in banks or with consumer goods companies, and me and a couple of others decided that actually, no, we're going to go and do something that is a bit more interesting, and we're going to go and work with Williams Formula One team. It was back in 2012 when Adam Parr was the CEO, and we were working with them on a project that was looking into financial regulation in sport and kind of pulling together some recommendations for financial regulation in Formula One. So we looked at kind of a whole range of sports, from kind of football and cricket and rugby in the UK that have different financial regulation models, to UEFA in Europe, to the US sports, which, as we know, are very heavily financially regulated with salary caps and those kind of things, and came up with some recommendations that Williams took to the FIA. And, ultimately, that was one of the drivers, and sort of Williams certainly was one of the champions of that level playing field that we're starting to see come in now, and the cost capping that just makes things much more competitive and a level playing field, because Williams is never going to be able to compete with a $300 million salary cap, or budget cap. But when it comes in at that kind of 150 million level, they're able to compete. And, as we know from great sporting properties like the Premier League or, whatever it is, the higher the ceiling, the higher the floor really, and the more closely compacted the competition is, the better it is for everyone ultimately. And, that was a fantastic project. And one of the fun things at the time was Williams have obviously gone through their troubles, but about 3 weeks into that project was when Pastor Maldonado won his only Grand Prix in Barcelona, I think it was. So we like to think that us coming into Williams had some sort of positive impact, and saw their performance, their top performance of kind of those recent years. But that was a really interesting one, because it just kind of gave me a little bit more knowledge around kind of the commercial models in sport. It showed me that there's a really interesting and engaging industry there, and certainly an industry that I wanted to commit my career to being in. but also I think it showed the value of kind of maybe not diving into the sports industry straight away, taking a step back, as we've talked about, and kind of getting some experience outside of sport and learning the skills that then the sports industry I think could massively benefit from, and kind of learning some of those strategic skills. And then you mentioned cricket, and yeah, I mean, cricket is a real passion of mine from a spectating and playing perspective. So it was a real honour to be able to go and work on the 2019 Cricket World Cup, which was hosted in England and Wales, probably one of the biggest tournaments that we'd had in the country kind of in recent years. It's got an audience of billions, and it is really a fantastic event. 46 matches over 6 weeks. And my role there was head of strategy. So I was kind of overseeing the development of the Cricket World Cup 19 strategy, and really asking the question, kind of, what do we want the tournament to achieve, and how do we make the tournament work for the different stakeholders? So how do we make it work for the ICC, who's the global governing body? How do we make it work for the ECB, who are the hosts? How do we make it work for the organising committee so that we deliver a fantastic event? And ultimately that came back in a lot of ways to how do we use the tournament as a platform to grow the game? So we know that the World Cup is kind of the ultimate showcase of the sport. It's an opportunity to get new fans into cricket for the first time ever, opportunity to get people playing the game and to kind of drive the legacy of it. So we did a number of things, but ultimately it kind of boiled down to trying to engage a whole generation of kids, of 5 to 12-year-olds, and give them kind of an experience and generate a passion for the game. And we set this ambition of engaging with 1 million kids throughout the course of the World Cup. And that gave us some focus, and we developed a number of programs that would secure that engagement. And ultimately we ended up engaging 1.4 million kids over the tournament. There was a fantastic kind of upswelling in interest for cricket. The numbers of people that bought tickets for the Cricket World Cup that had never bought a cricket ticket before was staggering. And it really just showed us kind of, if you take a really coordinated approach, then you can, deliver something very positive from these events. And it's not just kind of a one-off. It's not just a peak and then a massive trough again. And that was something that we were very conscious about, and actually kind of took a lot of the philosophies and the best practices that Steve Granger had implemented for the Rugby World Cup in 2015, and taking that philosophy, planning 2 to 3 years out, and making sure that there was a really robust kind of follow-up plan that the ECB were leading on afterwards, I think was really important. And yes, it was kind of impacted by COVID last summer, but kind of there's still positive signs of progress that we're seeing within the sport. And then the other thing on the cricket was working with the ICC, looking after their UNICEF partnership. And we developed a campaign called One Day for Children, which was a fundraising campaign with UNICEF to raise money for children around the world, and use the platform of the World Cup and the $1 billion audience to raise a fairly significant 6-figure sum. That was all championed at the England versus India game, which was on the 30th of June 2019 at Edgbaston, where we turned the stadium UNICEF blue with kind of all of the signage. It looked absolutely fantastic. We had 30,000 people with blue bandanas in the stadium, giving a fantastic kind of visual perspective. Sachin Tendulkar was there, which was fantastic. He was absolutely mobbed by the fans there, and he was really championing our cause as well. And yeah, it was just a fantastic, I guess, showcase of what, the power of sport for good, and the ability to use a tournament to raise funds for the people that need them. So from that perspective, working with the ECB, working with the ICC, working with UNICEF, I think we managed to kind of make the tournament greater than the sum of its parts. And as what I was alluding to earlier with SailGP, use sport for good, and kind of that power of sport to help change the world. And I think hopefully set a new benchmark for kind of how you use a tournament in that way. And we've obviously spoken a lot to Rugby League World Cup and to the UCI road cycling and a number of other sports, Netball World Cup as well in 2019, and share those best practices and share those learnings to further kind of how the industry looks at these tournaments and how the industry thinks more strategically around making the most of them, so to speak.
It's interesting that you mentioned the Rugby League World Cup, because I actually talked to John Dutton on an earlier episode, and he was the one that suggested that I should talk to someone from SailGP.
Great.
He has also seen your great work, and he thought that this would be very interesting.
That's good to hear. John's a good guy, and I've worked closely with John and Tracy on the World Cup as well, kind of in partnership with UK Sport and all of the good work that they're doing, trying to pull everything together, really.
Yeah. It's nice to hear about your career. I mean, strategy focused, but still, like, you have done some CSR and some other things for Formula One. We have already covered that you're an optimist, but in your career, have you had any bumps on the road, and how did you overcome this?
I guess the biggest bump in the road has got to be COVID, and it's been huge for the industry, partly because it stopped us from doing what we do. It stopped us from delivering events, from entertaining people, from engaging an audience. But it's also, taken the bottom out of the whole commercial model behind sport. And we're finding at the moment that investing in a new sports property is automatically a risk. Investing in anything in COVID times is a double risk. And that challenge, I think, for us around overcoming that is going to be massive. But as I said, I think what we've done is the right thing, in the sense of taking that step back. We spend a lot of time kind of cutting costs over the year, so that we could actually kind of, as a very core team, look at all of these questions and come back with a stronger product. And then I think it comes back to then kind of we saw it on the landing on Mars. The name of the spaceship around perseverance, and I think it comes back to just perseverance over a length of time. Be confident in the product that you've got, do the work to make sure it's as good as it can be, and then really it just becomes kind of a numbers game, a perseverance game. And I watched a great film over the last couple of weeks around the founder of McDonald's, and his thing was around persistence, and his thing was only around persistence. So once you've got a great product, it's about persistence to go out and sell that, to make it work, to make people buy into the philosophy, to the concept. So I think that's certainly our approach at SailGP, and that's certainly my approach, is that kind of once you've done that strategic thinking, once you've got something that you know will work, that you've done the research, you've crunched the numbers on it, then persistence, perseverance, to make sure that everyone buys into that. And also, I think communication as well. The industry's got to know that we're on this journey in which we want to be leaders in this space, and we want other organizations to come on that journey with us and collectively to make a difference, really.
That's very inspiring, and good advice to bring with us, all of us.
Hopefully, yeah.
Approaching the end here, is there something that I haven't asked you that you would like to mention, or maybe something with the upcoming now SailGP in April?
Yeah, I think we're expecting, I think, fireworks for the upcoming season in April. We've now got 8 teams. We introduced a new Kiwi team into the roster at the end of last year. They are the current America's Cup champions. They're going to add some real spice, I'd say, to the racing. And with some of the best sailors in the world racing on the fastest boats in the world on a very tight course, I think we can see some pretty exciting and exhilarating racing. So for us, we're just desperate to get back racing. We're super excited to see these boats on the water again. They're actually on transit at the moment from New Zealand, where they're made and stored, to Bermuda. So that's an exciting kind of milestone for us, getting them on the move. And we actually start a training camp to get the sailors back up to speed with these fantastic boats at the beginning of April. So that there'll be a kind of a month build up. There'll be a load of content that's going out over that time. So we're very excited and hopeful that kind of the sailing audience, especially off the back of the America's Cup, there's been a lot of interest in that, and kind of a lot of people will be asking kind of what's next. And it's great for us that we've kind of got that ready-made what's next to keep that engagement going, and to show people that actually you can deliver fantastic entertainment in a completely carbon neutral way, while also trying to promote something bigger and kind of work with corporate partners and host cities to do that.
Yeah, for sure. Just stay out of the Bermuda Triangle, right?
Absolutely, yeah. Well, They raced there in the America's Cup in 2017, so I'm assured it's great racing. It's a great place to sail, but we'll make sure that the ships getting the boats there stay out of that triangle.
Good to hear. So the final question, if you could choose the next guest on this podcast, who do you think that I should talk to? Yeah,
great question. I guess one of the guys that's inspired me most would be Steve Elworthy. I worked for him at the Cricket World Cup. He's, I'd say, a legend in organising massive sports events, and he's done some fantastic work in delivering cricket events around the world. And he was very much a leader of that philosophy of kind of getting me into the organisation to ask that question: how do we make the tournament bigger than the sum of its parts? How do we coordinate across multiple stakeholders? And I guess being a bit of a visionary in that space to ask that question and to bring me on board and to really value that side of the tournament and to design a tournament around kind of how you make it serve the whole cricketing community as such. So yeah, I'd say Steve's a great bet, and another great guy I worked with at the Cricket World Cup was Adrian Wells, who was CMO at the World Cup and now CMO at Quins, and he's doing some fantastic work there as well. So I'd say one of those two guys is a good next bet for you.
Sounds good. Might be a cricket episode coming up here.
Could be, exactly.
Charlie, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the Sports Management Podcast.
Thank you very much for having me. It's a good discussion and hopefully interesting for the listeners.
Thank you for listening to Sports Management Podcast. Do you have thoughts or ideas about this podcast, or do you know someone that I should interview next? Please reach out to me on sportsmpodcast@gmail.com or visit my website sportsmanagementpodcast.com. If you prefer social media, you can find me on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram @sportsmpodcast.